Come here, I'm gonna eat you! I'm bigger than you, I'm higher in the food chain! Get in my belly!
This is Grindle.
Greetings, fleshbags. It is I, Sentient Ashton. Unfortunately, we are talking about a tenor creation called Grindle.
Late is the hour.
Be silent!
I have no reason to listen to your trivial relation to time.
Besides, it's not like DE is coming out with updates every week, are they? But I digress. Grindle is one of those Warframes that I definitely consider to be underappreciated.
You serious?
Now, I'm sure you're confused as most Tenno usually are. So let's assess the situation together. Does that mean with me? No. Grindle's passive synergizes with his first active ability, which grants him 50 armor with each enemy he devours. This ability being Feast. He swallows an enemy whole, and any other enemy around them will join them in his stomach. But what does this mean besides simply gaining armor for each enemy eaten? Whatever enemy is in your path, Grindle will remove from the field, as long as he has the energy. And this is probably the biggest downside with this effect. The more enemies you have in your stomach, the faster your energy bar will deplete. However, if you desire for this to stop happening, press and hold the casting button, and he will spit them back up.
That's nasty.
Let's dissect this effect further, shall we? Any lesser pathetic organisms in the system, Grindle will be able to devour. Corpus soldiers. Infested. The Grenier, and your mother. More powerful enemies such as Juggernauts or the units you would see one or possibly two of in a given area, Grindle will not be able to devour. This includes bosses, demolish units, and captured targets. So this ability is quite possibly one of the most powerful crowd control effects when dealing with lesser units. The only real downside about this ability is it cannot affect more powerful enemies such as bosses, unlike many crowd control effects in the game that target multiple enemies at a time. And this ability can be stretched quite far, as Grindle can devour large targets that are not considered bosses or targets of interest. But this is where the interaction gets interesting. The superior life forms in the system, called the Sentients, will eventually adapt to this effect. Yes, you can consume them, but only for a short time, as they will adapt to this effect and remove themselves from Grindle's stomach. And the more times you cast this effect on them, they will continue to reduce the time they spend in your stomach. But you can only do this to the lesser sentient soldiers. Their more powerful predecessors will be immune to this effect. Yes, all of this is wonderful, isn't it, Tenno? But you're probably wondering what else this ability can do, and yes, there is more to it than what it actually says. Now, to understand this part of the experiment, you need to see my build. Now, you don't need to have the primed flow, the regular flow works just fine. What you must have here, Tenno, is high strength. Anything you have that increases strength works just fine, even if it isn't Augur Secrets or Blind Rage, as long as you have Intensify or any mod like that. That is what will help you quite a bit here, although I would recommend Blind Rage at least. But enough on that 10 out. As you can see, there are level 145 Arid Heavy Gunners over there. They are docile, so don't worry, they won't attack us just yet. For this experiment, I won't be using any other ability besides his first ability, and I will only cast it once. Now, what is happening here? Notice that all of the units that were just on the field are gone, and they cannot attack, they cannot move, they can't do anything to me, and while they are in my stomach, they are taking continuous damage until death. Notice something, Tenno. I did all of this with the press of a button. Now for the next part of this experiment, I will use one of the most powerful Tenno-designed Warframes in the system, and try to destroy all of those enemies just as fast as Grindle just did. Now for this experiment, I have brought along yet again... Hey guys, it's me! Wraith King has returned! And I have brought one of my favorite waifus of Warframe, Theron. Oh, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. I would greatly appreciate it. I love you all so much. Mwah! Mwah! Yes. Well, moving on from there, Tenno, as you can see, we are dealing with one of the 145 heavy gunners yet again. And quickly! But in this experiment with Saren, I am going to use her abilities the best way I possibly can. And that is synergizing her first ability with her ultimate, spreading her spores and doing lots and lots of damage to multiple enemies at a time. This makes Saren extremely deadly. Whenever there is a group of enemies, she will definitely devastate them in a matter of moments, which makes her earn her title as one of the most powerful crowd control warframes in the system. Now, Tenno, you must admit, even if you don't want to, Grindle did handle these enemies far quicker. However, I have an argument that states Grindle has a grave weakness and downside that makes him even more useless. Now, Tenno, this is where it gets interesting. Now, Tenno, the point of this experiment is to show why this ability is powerful, but also to demonstrate its greatest weakness. Grindle can remove these enemies from the field without taking very much damage, yes, but you are constantly draining energy, and sometimes you will spit up a few stragglers. Furthermore, Grindle can still clear these enemies much quicker than Saren, all without spamming multiple abilities just to do one thing. Now, my dear friends, my Saren simps. I'm not saying Saren is a bad warframe. I'm saying she's elegant, beautiful, and takes her time when she's eating. Grindle is more of a, well...
Get in my belly!
So before you fragile Tenno-Sos start complaining in the comments, I'm not trying to compare the two and say which is better! I'm simply trying to prove a point with Grindle's crowd control. If that affects your fragile Tenno feelings, I'm not really sorry. But alright, on to the experiment. Wait, what are you gonna do, my Saren? Science, Tenno! No! I know what you're gonna do, no! Oh look, Wraith King, a brand new skin for Wisp has been added to the market today. Where? It's mine! Now that we've gotten rid of him, it's time for us to continue the experiment, Tenno. In this part of the experiment, I will use her to the greatest of my ability. I will try my best to use all of the most efficient tools in her set, not just her first and second ability. But I imagine you getting angry in the comments right now.
Oh, he's trying to say that Saren's a bad warframe! Ah!
I'm not. In fact, no matter what Grindle can do, he's still worse than Saren in pretty much every way. One of the main reasons we are getting to, but the primary reason he's worse than Saren, is because she can deal damage to basically everyone. They don't have to be lesser pathetic organisms. They can be capture targets, anything in the system at all. she will be able to damage. And, most importantly, she doesn't have to put herself at risk to do these things, Tenno. Yes, she does kill them a lot slower than Grindle, but she doesn't have to put herself at risk and use a certain build to actually work. She can be built any way, Tenno, any way you please, and she should be very, very powerful, so she's hard to build wrong. Although I'm positive you'll find a way, Tenno. But alright, I'm going to bring a Warframe that's similar to Grindle, with a similar build, one that takes advantage of Hunter Adrenaline's great power. But this is only one of many ways to make Nidus useful. You see where I'm going with this, Tenno? Grindle has few builds that make him work, and this being the most powerful out of all of them. And even this isn't all that good. But moving on from there, this is the ability that was recently buffed, Nourish. And regardless of what the Tennos have done to this Warframe, it is still one of the worst abilities in the system. Oh, this Warframe never ceases to amaze me. But alright, Tenno, let's talk about the first effect on this set, which is called Nourish Energy. Now, I will put this as simply as I possibly can, to where even the most primitive of Tenno minds can understand what I am about to say. Use Trinity, Tenno. If you desire to stain a support Warframe with your pathetic transference, use Trinity, please. By all means. I have tried tirelessly to make this effect useful in any way, and every time it came up useless. Arcane Energize, anything at all. Anything that will help you generate more energy is better than this ability. One, because it wastes energy. Just to use it, you have to find the energy. And finally, you actually have to swap to this nonsense to actually use it. Call that last bit of cheap shot all you want, Tenno. I despise this effect. I don't like it. Anything would have been better than this. But that doesn't compare to this next ability, Tenno. This is quite possibly the most pointless ability in the game. It's almost like they learned absolutely nothing from the past version of Vubin. Nourished armor is not what it sounds like. You gain a barrier that is made out of toxin energy around you. This causes so little toxic damage to enemies around you that it is literally laughable. Once you are attacked while this ability is active, you will tickle enemies with toxic damage around you, causing them to laugh uncontrollably. Nourish Strike is the only valuable effect in this entire ability. The other abilities are just as ridiculous and goofy as the Lotus selection of allies.
Because you're a friend, I'm going to offer you something special.
The enemies do take scaling damage in Grindle's stomach, and this does definitely help him do even more damage to enemies, making it only useful to him compared to his allies, because toxic damage in itself is relatively useless going against most enemies, especially infested. This can be very useful, as we have gone over multiple times in this experiment, but alas, with or without Nourish Strike, Feast will still deal scaling damage, making the heal part of Nourish the only reason to use his second ability at all. What's that, Tenno? You still think Grindle is a good Warframe? Well, I'm afraid you're wrong yet again, for the utter stupidity of his design has yet to end. Behold yet another worthless ability. Regurgitate. Now, calling this ability ridiculous may be somewhat of an understatement, although it looks stupid. You can insta-kill high-level targets with this ability. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, you spit them out and it does very little damage. You're spitting them in the wrong direction, Tenno. Allow me to demonstrate. This ability's base damage is trash, but it's only effective if you spit them in the right direction, Tenno. You see, Tenno, this effect was not designed to stop. Once Grindle spits an enemy out, they will keep going and going until they hit something. But you can push it further than that, Tenno. You see, if you shoot them off the map, this will execute them. Higher level enemies, if you shoot them directly in the air, well, that would have happened. But if you shoot them directly off the map, it will kill them instantly. Shooting them all over the map you're standing on will do basically nothing. But shooting them off the map entirely will execute them. No matter how high their level is, this will instantly kill them. And I am about to show you something that might make my circuits fry, because I could not entirely calculate the probability. This has to be an error. This has to be a glitch in the design. There is no way Grindle can destroy a sentient soldier with one ability. So in order to confirm that this is a glitch, I will go back to my research again. He can actually do it. However, keep in mind that you do need an edge of the map for this to work. And on many different tile sets in Warframe, there are plenty of those, especially on the sentient ships themselves. Keep in mind, Tenno, this doesn't seem to be something that the developers of this Warframe have done purposefully, and so they may come out with a fix for it.
Eventually.
As we all know, DE rarely fixes errors like this on Warframes, and what makes this effect even more interesting is it's not exactly a bug, it's just how the game works. But keep this in mind, Tenno. When you do this, you will not be able to pick up the items the sentients themselves drop. You simply remove them off the map, including the contents that they contain. So it may not be the most intelligent way to get rid of enemies, but if you are having trouble defeating an enemy with a melee weapon or your own primary weapon or abilities, this is a good way to get rid of the sentient soldiers. But with an effect this grave, on in-game enemies like the sentients, I doubt DE will ignore this interaction. There are some occasions whenever I spit out a sentient soldier, they do stop on a dime when I spit them out, such as that. So I have a feeling that this may be some type of glitch. Either way, Tenno, this is something I would assume you should take advantage of in the meantime. Enjoy, I suppose. But finally, his last ability, then I can move on with my life, Pulverize. Grindle attempts to imitate something far more beautiful than him and rolls enemies down. Wonderful. With this ability, Grindle becomes a giant stupid object, much like the Tenno themselves, I'd say. Anything stupid enough to get in your way will be ragdolled, and take a good amount of impact damage, actually. While in this state, you have a massive damage resistance, not invulnerability, but resistance against damage, as I have discovered that some bosses can still hurt Grindle while he is in this state. But lesser enemies can do very little, if anything at all, to him. Every time I use this ability, it has proven itself to be surprising. Yes, there are better ways to do this, but this is still rather effective in certain situations. There are other interactions with this particular ability that I have found mysterious, as it does seem that DE may have intended for this to work without enemies in your stomach. During one of my experiments, I patiently awaited for one of the lab rats to die inside of Grindle's stomach. After, Grindle was able to remain in this state as long as he had the energy to do so. Which not only tells me that it is absolutely possible for Grindle to use these abilities without enemies in his stomach. Furthermore, I believe that possibly not all of this was intended to work as it does. Which brings us to the conclusion of our experiment, Tenno. But before I end, there is one last thing that Grindle does that I have forgotten to mention. He can suck in items around him with his feast ability, but it is rather useless. But I believe that is enough said on that small effect. There are many adjustments I would add to this Warframe, but I believe that is a video for another time.
Hey Ashton! Can I be in a part of this part of the experiment?
No.
All right.
As I was saying, to conclude my experiment, I have come to the understanding that Grindle isn't exactly what the community makes him out to be. He's not an awful Warframe, he is a bad Warframe. An awful Warframe is something that is so unbelievably terrible that they are almost impossible to build correctly. Each and every ability on their set is evidently useless, and finally the grind to get them is even more ludicrous to get the Warframe themselves, to where you would have to resort to buying them with platinum, opposed to actually playing the game and obtaining them normally. That is what I would consider an awful Warframe. Grindle is a few of those things, yes, but his abilities can be effective, although a few I would consider useless, particularly most of the effects Nourish comes with. Regurgitate is seemingly pointless, but it can execute enemies. Although it possibly may not work as DE intended, but it can execute enemies, regardless. Pulverize is a very unusual ability. Yes, it's strange, but in the end, it can be rather effective in some scenarios, I will admit. So Grindle isn't awful, he's just bad. With the simple assistance of Hunter Adrenaline, he can be rather useful. Although it does irritate me that a Warframe needs a certain mod to be efficient, but Hunter Adrenaline is a very common mod and basically everyone has it. If you don't, just ask someone in your clan, I'm sure they have at least 100. Furthermore, I believe this concludes our experiment, Tenno. If you found this guide efficient, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you too can be a part of the Dark Kingdom. Perhaps there's an awful Warframe you wish for me to dissect. Please leave their names in the comments. I may or may not ignore you. For now, it appears that my job here is done, because I don't think there is a worse Warframe than—
Hey Ashton!
What?
I found a new waifu!